Listen carefully. Most people talk too much, think too little, and wonder why no one listens to them. This audiobook will change that. Influence is not about being louder, it's not about being smarter, and it's definitely not about convincing people with words alone. Influence starts in your mind. It shows in how you speak, and it's proven by how others respond to you. If you learn how to think clearly, speak with precision, and move without needing approval, you gain power. And once you have that power, you don't chase attention. Attention comes to you. This audiobook will teach you how. Weak thinking creates weak communication, and weak communication repels respect. Let's be clear from the start. People don't ignore you because they're rude. They ignore you because your thinking is sloppy, and sloppy thinking leaks through every word you speak. You have a choice. You can think clearly or you can stay invisible. That's the key. Most people talk without knowing what they believe. Snorts, they react instead of decide. They repeat what they've heard instead of forming positions, and then they wonder why no one listens. Influence does not begin with speech. It begins with thought. Before you open your mouth, your mind has already decided your power level. Clarity creates authority. Say it again. Clarity creates authority. When your thinking is unclear, your words wander. When your words wander, people disengage. And when people disengage, your influence dies quietly. That's not bad luck, that's cause and effect. You don't need their permission to think clearly. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to choose precision over noise. Most people rush opinions. Strong people choose positions. There's a difference. A rushed opinion is emotional. A chosen position is intentional. Opinion says this is how I feel right now. Position says this is where I stand. Influence belongs to people who stand. Here's where most people fail. They believe thinking is passive. It's not. Thinking is an action, and disciplined thinking is a skill. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. It's not about being clever, it's about being clear. You have a choice. Every time you speak, you're either revealing clarity or exposing confusion. There's no middle ground. If you don't know exactly what you're trying to say, you will say too much. Over-explaining is not depth, it's disorder. That's the key. People who ramble are not profound. They are undecided, and undecided minds cannot lead. Here's the rule you must adopt immediately. Never speak before you finish thinking. That sounds simple. It's not because your emotions want speed. Your ego wants validation, your insecurity wants approval, but influence demands restraint. Clear thinkers pause. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't chase agreement. They think first, they speak second, and when they speak, people listen. Clarity creates authority. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop answering immediately. You will stop reacting on impulse. You will stop speaking just because someone is waiting. You have a choice. When someone asks you a question, pause 1 second, 2 seconds. Use that space to decide your position, not your feeling, your position. Ask yourself, what is the point I am making? What do I want this person to understand? What outcome am I aiming for? If you can't answer those questions in your mind, you have no business speaking. That's not harsh, that's leadership. Most people think out loud. Influential people think in silence. That's the key. Here's another truth you must accept. Confusion is contagious. When your thinking is unclear, it spreads to others. They feel uneasy, distracted, uncertain. And people do not follow uncertainty, they follow clarity. This is why calm thinkers dominate emotional rooms. This is why quiet minds overpower loudmouths. It's not about force, it's about structure. Clear thinking gives structure to your words, structure gives weight to your voice, and weight creates influence. Clarity creates authority. Now listen carefully. You must stop outsourcing your thinking, stop borrowing opinions, stop repeating phrases that aren't yours, stop reacting to trends, headlines, and emotional pressure. You don't need their permission to think independently. Independent thinking is the foundation of influence. If you rely on others to tell you what to think, you will always speak like a follower even when you want to lead. That's the key. Here's a discipline you will practice daily. Before any important conversation, ask yourself one question. What do I know to be true? Not what you feel, not what others say, what you know. Truth stabilizes your speech. Truth removes hesitation. Truth eliminates the need to impress. When you speak from truth, your words slow down naturally. Your tone deepens. Your presence sharpens. You don't need theatrics, you don't need volume, you don't need approval. Clarity creates authority. Another rule you must live by: if you can't say it simply, you don't understand it yet. Complexity is often camouflage for confusion. Influential people reduce, they distill, they simplify, not because they lack depth, but because they've mastered it. That's the key. You are not here to sound smart, you are here to be understood, and understanding is power. Now let's talk about what to stop doing. Stop arguing while you're still forming your thoughts. Stop defending positions you haven't chosen. Stop explaining ideas you haven't clarified. You have a choice. Silence while thinking is strength. Speaking without thinking is weakness. It's not about being quiet, it's about being deliberate. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. It's not about hesitation, it's about control. Clear thinkers don't rush because they don't need to prove anything. They know where they stand. And when you know where you stand, people feel it. You don't need their permission to stand firm. Clarity creates authority. This chapter is your foundation. If you don't fix your thinking, nothing else in this audiobook will work. Your words will fail, your presence will weaken, your influence will collapse. But if you master this, everything changes. You speak less, you say more, and people lean in. You have a choice. Fix your thinking or lose your influence. That's the key. You've learned how to build clarity. Now it's time to remove the biggest enemy of influence: approval seeking. You mastered your thinking, now let's talk about your mouth. Approval seeking destroys credibility faster than silence. Let that sink in. Not disagreement, not criticism, not even rejection. Approval seeking. The moment people sense that you need to be liked, your influence collapses. You have a choice. You can speak to be accepted or you can speak to lead. That's the key. Most people talk for one reason: they want reassurance. They want nods, they want smiles, they want to feel safe, and in chasing safety, they lose respect. Influential people understand a hard truth early. Respect is not given to those who ask for it, it is granted to those who don't need it. You don't need their permission to be respected. Say it again, you don't need their permission to be respected. Approval seeking sounds like this: over-explaining your point, softening your words so no one feels uncomfortable, laughing at jokes you don't find funny, agreeing when you don't agree. Every one of these behaviors sends the same message: I need you to like me. And once that message is sent, authority disappears. That's not psychology, that's human instinct. People don't follow those who need validation, they follow those who are grounded without it. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. You have a choice. Most people confuse politeness with approval seeking. They are not the same. You can be respectful without being submissive. You can be calm without being agreeable. You can be kind without being weak. But approval seekers don't know the difference. They talk too much, they justify everything, they explain intentions nobody asked about, and the more they speak, the smaller they become. That's the key. Influential people don't speak to be liked, they speak to be understood, and understanding comes from clarity, not consensus. Let's expose the real problem. Approval seeking is fear. Wearing a friendly mask, fear of conflict, fear of silence, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being disliked. But leadership requires discomfort. If your words are designed to avoid tension, they will never create movement. You have a choice. Every time you open your mouth, ask yourself one question: am I saying this to lead or to be liked? That question alone will change how you speak. Snorts: if the answer is to be liked, stop, pause, reframe. You don't need their permission to say what matters. Here's a rule you must adopt immediately. Never trade truth for approval. Approval fades, truth compounds. People may resist your clarity in the moment, but they will respect it over time. That's the key. Approval seekers chase short-term comfort. Influential people build long-term authority. And authority is quiet, it doesn't beg, it doesn't rush, it doesn't apologize for existing. Now listen carefully. The need to be liked often shows up as emotional cushioning. You add extra words to soften impact. You hedge your statements with maybe, just, and I think. Those words are leaks, they drain power from your message. Strong speakers don't remove emotion, they remove unnecessary emotion. Snorts: it's not about being harsh, it's about being precise. You have a choice. Say what you mean, say it cleanly, then stop. Silence after clarity is strength. Silence after approval seeking is anxiety. That's the difference. Here's something most people never realize. When you stop trying to be liked, conversations become shorter. Why? Because you stop feeding uncertainty, you stop inviting debate you don't need, you stop negotiating your own position. Influence grows when you stop bargaining for acceptance. You don't need their permission to hold your ground. Another truth you must accept: not everyone will like you, and that's a requirement. If everyone likes you, you are leading nothing. Leadership creates separation, it draws lines. It makes decisions that exclude as much as they include. Approval seekers avoid this. Influencers embrace it. That's the key. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop explaining yourself unless clarity requires it. You will stop defending positions that don't need defense. You will stop reacting emotionally to disagreement. Disagreement does not threaten influence. Neediness does. When someone challenges you, don't rush to respond. Pause, breathe, decide. You have a choice. You can argue for approval, or you can state your position and let it stand. Strong people let silence do the work. Another discipline you must build: get comfortable with neutral reactions. Not applause, not praise, neutral. Neutral faces mean people are processing. Processing is good. Approval seekers panic in neutrality. They rush to fill space. They talk themselves into weakness. Influential people wait. That's the key. Remember this. People trust those who don't chase reactions. The less you need immediate feedback, the more weight your words carry. You don't need their permission to be respected. Let's address the biggest lie approval seekers believe: if they like me, they'll listen. False. People listen to clarity, they follow certainty, they respect self-control. Lickability without authority is entertainment, not leadership. And you're not here to entertain. It's not about charm, it's about discipline. It's not about being smooth, it's about being solid. You have a choice. Choose clarity over comfort. Choose position over popularity. Choose respect over approval. Because the moment you stop talking to be liked, your words change, they slow down, they land harder, they stay longer, and people feel it. This chapter removes the emotional leash, it frees your voice from dependency, it gives your words backbone. You stop begging for approval, you stop negotiating respect. That's the key. You've learned to think clearly, you've learned to stop talking to be liked. Now it's time to master timing, because even the right words lose power when spoken too fast. You remove the need for approval. Now let's sharpen restraint. Reaction is emotional, response is power. Understand this difference or pay for it daily. Most people don't speak, they react, they fire words the moment emotion spikes. They answer before the thought is complete, they respond to pressure instead of choosing direction. And every time they do, they lose authority. You have a choice. You can react like everyone else, or you can respond like someone in control. That's the key. Every word spoken too fast lowers your perceived intelligence. Not because the words are wrong, but because speed signals loss of control. Control is influence, and influence never rushes. Look closely at people you respect. They don't hurry their words, they don't scramble to reply, they don't fill silence out of fear, they pause. Pause is not hesitation, pause is command. Say it again. Pause is not weakness. Pause is command. Pause first, power follows. That phrase is not a slogan, it's a discipline. Reaction comes from emotion, response comes from structure. Reaction says I must answer now. Response says I decide when and how. That difference alone separates leaders from noise. You don't need their permission to pause, you don't need their permission to think, you don't need their permission to slow the moment down. But most people won't do it because silence exposes insecurity. They're afraid that if they don't respond immediately, they'll look stupid. In reality, the opposite is true. Fast responses look impulsive. Measured responses look intelligent. That's the key. Here's the hard truth. If you cannot control the timing of your words, you do not control the conversation. And if you don't control the conversation, you do not influence the outcome. It's not about being quiet, it's about being deliberate. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. It's not about intelligence. Without restraint, you have a choice. Most people believe silence is empty. It's not. Silence is a buffer between stimulus and action. And inside that buffer, power is born. That buffer gives you time to think, time to choose words, time to decide direction. Without it, you're emotional. With it, you're strategic. Pause first, power follow. Let's make this practical. From this moment on, you will install a pause before every response. Not a long pause, not an awkward pause, a deliberate pause. One breath, one moment. That breath is your line of defense against stupidity. Because when emotions spike, intelligence drops. That's not an insult, that's biology. Emotion hijacks language, and hijacked language destroys credibility. That's the price of reaction. You've seen it happen. Someone loses their temper, speaks too fast, says too much, and in seconds, years of respect disappear. That's the cost. You have a choice. You can win arguments or you can win influence. You rarely get both in the same moment. Influence requires patience, and patience requires control. Here's another truth. People test you with speed. They rush you with questions, interrupt you, push you to respond quickly. Why? Because rushed people reveal weakness. When you slow down, the test reverses. Now they feel pressure. Silence creates gravity. Gravity pulls attention. That's the key. Strong communicators do not match the other person's pace. They set their own. They decide when to speak. They decide when to stop. They decide silence is the better answer. You don't need their permission to control timing. Another discipline you must adopt: never respond while emotionally charged. If you feel irritation, excitement, anger, or the urge to prove, pause. Emotion is information, not instruction. It tells you something is happening. It does not tell you what to say. Reaction confuses the two. Response separates them. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about mastering it. That's the key. Let's talk about perceived intelligence. People don't judge intelligence by vocabulary. They judge it by composure. Composure signals thought. Thought signals clarity. Clarity signals authority. Speed destroys composure. When you speak too fast, you sound uncertain, even when you're right. When you slow down, your words carry weight. Even when they're simple, slow, and certain, beats clever, fast, and emotional every time. You have a choice. Speak quickly to feel relieved or speak deliberately to be respected. Now listen carefully. Pausing does not mean you always speak less. It means you speak better. You remove filler, you remove repetition, you remove emotion disguised as logic. What remains is clean, direct, unavoidable. That's influence. Here's a rule you must memorize. If it doesn't need to be said now, don't say it now. Urgency is often ego pretending to be importance. Strong people are not urgent, they are precise. That's the key. You'll notice something powerful when you start pausing. People will lean in, they will wait, they will stop interrupting because you've changed the rhythm, and the one who controls rhythm controls the room. You don't need their permission to slow the room down. This chapter is about reclaiming control. Control over your mouth, control over timing, control over impulse. Because influence is not built by what you say. It's built by what you don't say until the right moment. You have a choice. React and feel powerful for 5 seconds, or respond and be powerful for years. That's the difference. You've learned to think clearly. You've learned to stop seeking approval. Now you've learned to pause before speaking. That pause is your edge. But even with perfect timing, words still lose power when there are too many of them. You mastered restraint. Now it's time to sharpen precision. Over-explaining signals insecurity. Short sentences land harder and last longer. Understand this or remain unheard. Most people believe more words mean more clarity. They're wrong. More words usually mean more doubt. When you talk too much, you don't sound informed. You sound unsure, and uncertainty repels influence. You have a choice. You can speak endlessly to feel safe, or you can speak precisely to be respected. That's the key. Powerful communicators are not verbose. They are intentional. They don't pour words into the room hoping something sticks. They deliver statements, then stop, because they understand the law most people ignore. The longer you talk, the weaker your message becomes. Brevity builds dominance. Say it again. Brevity builds dominance. Over-explaining is fear disguised as helpfulness. It's the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being challenged, the fear of silence. But silence after a clear statement is strength. You don't need their permission to stop talking. Here's what over-explaining really says: I don't trust my point to stand on its own. And the moment people sense that, they stop trusting it too. That's the key. Influential people let their words breathe. They don't suffocate meaning with excess explanation. They make the point, they pause, they move on, and that pause forces others to process. Processing creates impact. Now listen carefully. Every unnecessary sentence you add after clarity subtracts authority. Every extra justification weakens conviction. It's not about being rude, it's about being disciplined. It's not about saying less to look mysterious. It's about saying only what matters. You have a choice. Most people talk to avoid discomfort. Influential people tolerate discomfort to create results. That's the difference. Let's expose the pattern. Over-explainers often start strong. Their first sentence is clear. Their second adds context. Their third adds reassurance. Their fourth adds emotion. Their fifth apologizes. By the end, the original point is buried. Strong communicators stop at sentence 1 or 2. That's the key. Short sentences create rhythm. Rhythm creates authority. Long explanations create noise. Noise creates doubt. If you want your words to be remembered, shorten them. If you want your words to be respected, reduce them. Brevity builds dominance. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will adopt a discipline. Make your point in one sentence. If clarity requires a second, add it. If it doesn't, stop. You don't need their permission to end your statement. Watch what happens when you do this. People stop interrupting, they stop skimming, they start listening because your words now have edges. Edges cut through distraction. Another truth you must accept: people rarely need more information, they need more certainty. Certainty comes from structure, not volume. When you speak briefly, your confidence rises automatically. Why? Because there's nothing to hide behind. No filler, no padding, no emotional cushioning, just meaning. That's the key. Here's a rule you must memorize. If your message is strong, it doesn't need protection. Over-explaining is protection, precision is power. You have a choice. Protect your ego or project authority. Now let's talk about memory. People don't remember conversations, they remember lines. One sentence can echo for years. 10 sentences vanish in minutes. Short sentences stick, they repeat, they travel. That's influence. This is why leaders speak in statements, not paragraphs. This is the direction. This is the decision. This is what matters. Then silence. You don't need their permission to be brief. Another behavior to stop immediately: answering questions you weren't asked. Over-explainers do this constantly. They anticipate objection. They defend against imagined criticism. In doing so, they introduce doubt that didn't exist. That's self-sabotage. Answer what was asked, nothing more. That's the key. Silence after a clear answer is not awkward, it's commanding. If someone wants more, they'll ask, and when they ask, you respond briefly. Again, this creates a powerful dynamic. They pull information from you, you don't push it on them. Pull beats push every time. Brevity builds dominance. Now understand this. Speaking less does not mean having less to say, it means you've refined your thinking. Clear thinkers don't ramble, they select. Selection is intelligence in action. You have a choice. Rambling makes you feel productive. Precision makes you effective. Here's a discipline you will practice daily. Before you speak, ask yourself, what is the one sentence that matters? Say that sentence, then stop. If you feel the urge to keep talking, pause. That urge is insecurity leaving your system. Let it go. You don't need their permission to be concise. Over time, something powerful happens. People start quoting you, they repeat your words back to you, they associate you with clarity. That's authority. Authority doesn't shout, it condenses. That's the key. Let's address a final lie. Many believe that speaking less makes them invisible. The opposite is true. Speaking less makes every word heavier. When you're known for brevity, people pay attention when you speak. Scarcity increases value. Words are no different. You have a choice. Flood the room with noise or deliver impact with precision. This chapter sharpened your language. You learn to cut excess. You learn to trust clarity. You learn to stop talking when the point is made. Brevity built your dominance, but even short words lose power if your tone is unstable. You mastered restraint. You mastered precision. Now it's time to master control at a deeper level. Your voice. Calm tones command rooms, even without volume. Emotion leaks authority. Control multiplies it. Understand this, or your words will keep working against you. Most people obsess over what to say. Very few master how to say it, and that's why they lose influence even when they're right. You have a choice. You can speak emotionally and feel justified, or you can speak calmly and be effective. That's the key. Your tone tells people everything before your words land. It signals control or the lack of it. It communicates confidence or insecurity, leadership or impulse. Long before anyone processes your message, they feel your tone. And feeling always comes first. Calm is influence. Say it again. Calm is influence. People don't follow excitement. They don't follow intensity. They don't follow emotional spikes. They follow stability. Calm is stability in sound. This is where most people fail. They raise their voice to feel powerful. They speed up when challenged. They inject emotion to force agreement. And every one of those moves drains authority. Emotion does not add power to words. It exposes weakness in the speaker. That's not opinion. That's human behavior. You don't need their permission to be calm. When your tone is steady, people listen longer. When your tone is controlled, people interrupt less. When your tone is calm, people assume you know something they don't. That's influence. Let's be clear, calm does not mean passive. Calm does not mean soft. Calm does not mean submissive. Calm means regulated. It means you are not being driven by the moment. You are driving it. That's the key. Emotion leaks authority because emotion reveals need. Need to convince, need to win, need to be right, need to be heard. Influential people don't need reaction. They create outcomes. And outcomes come from control. You have a choice. Every time your voice rises, you are signaling loss of control. Every time your tone tightens, you are revealing pressure. Pressure weakens perception. Calm strengthens it. Now let's make this practical. From this moment forward, you will lower your tone, not your message. Lower does not mean quiet. Lower means grounded. Slow your pace. Drop the pitch slightly. Remove urgency from your voice. Urgency belongs to emergencies. Influence belongs to composure. That's the key. Here's a discipline you must practice daily. When emotion shows up, pause. Before you speak, breathe. Then speak below the emotional line. If the room is loud, go calm. If the moment is tense, go steady. If someone is emotional, you become neutral. Contrast creates authority. People escalate to pull you up into chaos. You stay calm to pull them down into clarity. You don't need their permission to regulate the room. Another truth most people miss: the calmer you sound, the more dangerous your words become, because calm words are chosen. They are intentional. They are not accidental. People feel that. That's why calm speakers are taken seriously even when they say little. Calm is influence. Let's address a common mistake. Many people believe passion equals leadership. It doesn't. Passion excites crowds. Calm leads decision. If your voice shakes when challenged, your position weakens even if it's correct. If your tone stays steady, your words gain weight even if they're simple. That's the power of control. You have a choice. Let emotion run your voice or let discipline shape it. It's not about suppressing feeling. It's about mastering expression. It's not about being cold, it's about being precise. It's not about personality, it's about discipline. That's the key. Here's another discipline you will adopt. Never match the other person's emotional level. If they get louder, you slow down. If they get faster, you pause. If they push, you ground. This creates asymmetry, and asymmetry creates power. People instinctively follow the calmer nervous system. That's biology, not strategy. You don't need their permission to stay composed. Let's talk about credibility. Credibility is not built by sounding convincing. It's built by sounding cert. Certainty lives in calm delivery. Fast emotional speech sounds defensive. Slow calm speech sounds decided. Decisions command respect. That's the key. Another behavior to stop immediately. Using tone to seek agreement. Approval seeking shows up in the voice. Rising pitch at the end of statements. Nervous laughter. Excessive enthusiasm. These are tells. They say, please accept this. Influential people don't ask for acceptance. They state positions and they do it calmly. You have a choice. Speak to be validated or speak to be followed. Now listen carefully. Your tone is trained, not inherited. You can practice calm. You can condition it. You can install it under pressure. How? By slowing your breathing, by lowering your pace, by removing emotional commentary from your words. Say less, say it slower, say it steadier. That's the formula. Calm is influence. Over time, something powerful happens. People associate your voice with clarity, your presence with control, your words with outcomes. They feel safe following you. Safety creates trust. Trust creates influence. That's the chain. You don't need their permission to lead calmly. This chapter gave you vocal control. You learned that tone outweighs vocabulary. You learned that calm multiplies authority. You learned that emotional restraint sharpens impact. Your words are now precise. Your timing is controlled, your tone is grounded, but there is one behavior that still silently destroys authority even with calm tone and short words: the need to prove yourself. The need to prove is the loudest sign of weakness. Confident people let results speak. If you remember nothing else from this chapter, remember this. The moment you feel the urge to prove, you have already lost leverage. You have a choice. You can prove or you can perform. That's the key. Most people spend their lives explaining why they are right, why they deserve respect, why they should be trusted, and in doing so they quietly confess insecurity. Influence does not argue for its existence, it demonstrates it. Results replace arguments. Say it again, results replace arguments. The need to prove comes from fear, fear of being underestimated, fear of being ignored, fear of being questioned. But leadership is not built on reassurance, it's built on outcomes. You don't need their permission to let your work speak. Here's the hard truth. If your position were truly strong, it wouldn't need defense. Defense signals doubt, and doubt erodes authority. That's the key. Watch people who are secure. They don't over-explain credentials. They don't remind others of past wins. They don't argue every challenge. They move, they execute, they deliver, and the room adjusts. Results speak a language everyone understands. Now listen carefully. The need to prove shows up in subtle ways. Listing achievements unprompted, correcting others unnecessarily, explaining intentions instead of delivering outcomes. These behaviors are loud, and loud behavior is usually compensation. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. It's not about ego, it's about restraint. You have a choice. Every time you feel challenged, you can defend or you can act. Action compounds, arguments evaporate. That's the key. Here's a rule you must adopt immediately. Never argue what can be demonstrated. If you can show it, don't say it. If you can deliver it, don't debate it. Words convince temporarily. Results convince permanently. Results replace arguments. Let's talk about power. Power does not rush to justify itself. It assumes position and weights. The person who explains is often beneath the person who decides. This is why leaders issue direction, not justification. This is the plan, this is the standard, this is the outcome, then silence. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. Most people think proving builds credibility. It doesn't. Consistency builds credibility. Follow-up builds credibility. Outcomes build credibility. Proof-seeking behavior weakens presence because it places you in a reactive role. Reactive people defend. Influential people move. That's the key. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop correcting people unless correction creates outcome. You will stop defending your intentions. You will stop explaining decisions that are already made. If someone doubts you, let them. Doubt does not harm execution, but arguing with doubt wastes energy. You have a choice. Spend energy convincing or spend it building. Clear's throat. One creates noise, the other creates momentum. Here's snorts. Another truth you must accept. People who need to prove themselves are easy to manipulate. Why? Because they are emotionally invested in perception. They react to disrespect. They chase validation, they argue to protect ego. Influential people are immune to this. They are invested in direction, not opinion. That's the key. Another discipline you must practice. Let people misunderstand you briefly. Misunderstanding is temporary. Results clarify everything. If you rush to correct perception, you expose insecurity. If you stay focused on outcomes, perception adjusts automatically. You don't need their permission to stay focused. Now listen closely. The strongest position in any conversation is non-defensive clarity. Not silence born of fear, silence born of confidence. When someone challenges you and you don't rush to respond, tension shifts. They feel it, they wonder, they recalibrate. Silence backed by competence is intimidating. That's influence. Results replace arguments. Let's talk about power. Power does not rush to justify itself. It assumes position and waits. The person who explains is often beneath the person who decides. This is why leaders issue direction, not justification. This is the plan, this is the standard, this is the outcome, then silence. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. Most people think proving builds credibility. It doesn't. Consistency builds credibility. Follow-up builds credibility. Outcomes build credibility. Proof-seeking behavior weakens presence because it places you in a reactive role. Reactive people defend. Influential people move. That's the key. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop correcting people unless correction creates outcome. You will stop defending your intentions. You will stop explaining decisions that are already made. If someone doubts you, let them. Doubt does not harm execution, but arguing with doubt wastes energy. You have a choice. Spend energy convincing or spend it building. One creates noise, the other creates momentum. Here's another truth you must accept. People who need to prove themselves are easy to manipulate. Why? Because they are emotionally invested in perception, they react to disrespect, they chase validation, they argue to protect ego. Influential people are immune to this. They are invested in direction, not opinion. That's the key. Another discipline you must practice. Let people misunderstand you briefly. Misunderstanding is temporary. Results clarify everything. If you rush to correct perception, you expose insecurity. If you stay focused on outcomes, perception adjusts automatically. You don't need their permission to stay focused. Now listen closely. The strongest position in any conversation is non-offensive clarity. Not silence born of fear, silence born of confidence. When someone challenges you and you don't rush to respond, tension shifts. They feel it, they wonder, they recalibrate. Silence backed by competence is intimidating. That's influence. Results replace arguments. Let's address another common mistake. Many people believe they must constantly remind others of their value. Wrong. Value that must be announced is usually declining. Real value shows up repeatedly, quietly. And on time, that's the key. You have a choice. Talk about potential or deliver results. Explain capability or demonstrate it. One builds stories, the other builds reputation. Reputation is what speaks when you're not in the room. And reputation is built by consistency, not explanation. You don't need their permission to build quietly. Here's a final discipline to adopt. When challenged, ask yourself, will responding create results or just relieve my ego? If it's the ego, stay silent. If it's results, act. This simple filter will save you years of wasted energy. That's the key. This chapter removes another layer of weakness. You stop proving yourself, you stop defending ego. You learn to trust outcomes. Now your thinking is clear, your speech is precise, your tone is calm, your actions speak. But influence is not only about what you say or do, it's about who controls the narrative. You mastered execution. Now it's time to master the frame. Whoever defines the frame controls perception, and perception controls outcomes. If you miss this, nothing else saves you. Most people lose conversations before they speak because they walk into frames they didn't set. You have a choice. You can react inside someone else's narrative, or you can define the narrative yourself. That's the key. A frame is the invisible boundary around a conversation. It decides what matters. It decides what's relevant. It decides who leads. And if you don't set it, someone else will. When you react, you accept their frame. When you respond strategically, you replace it. Set the frame, lead the outcome. Say it again. Set the frame, lead the outcome. Most people argue content. Influential people control context. That's the difference. Here's how people lose power without noticing. Someone criticizes them, they defend. Someone questions them, they explain. Someone pressures them, they rush. Every one of those reactions accepts the other person's frame. Snort's defense says, you have authority over me. Explanation says, I need your approval. Rushing says, your urgency controls me. That's the key. You don't need their permission to reject a bad frame. Influential people don't argue inside frames designed to weaken them. They step back, they redefine, they redirect, control the frame, and the conversation follows. Now listen carefully. Frames are set in the first few seconds. Tone, pace, direction. If you allow the other person to define urgency, emotion, or relevance, you're already behind. You have a choice. Slow the moment down, clarify the objective, name what matters. This is how you take control without force. Example, someone confronts you emotionally. They want reaction, they want speed, they want dominance. If you react emotionally, you lose. If you argue content, you lose. Instead, you say calmly, let's be clear about what we're actually solving. That sentence resets the frame. Now the conversation is about solutions, not emotion. That's the key. Another example, someone challenges your decision. They want justification, they want leverage. You don't defend, you state the frame. This decision is based on outcomes, not opinion. Now the ground shifts. Frames decide what counts as valid input. You don't need their permission to set boundaries. Most people think framing is manipulation. It's not, it's leadership. Leadership decides direction. Direction requires framing. If you don't define what the conversation is about, it becomes about you. And once it's about you, you're defending. That's the key. Here's a discipline you must adopt. Before responding, ask yourself, what frame am I operating in right now? If the answer is their emotion, their urgency, their accusation, stop. You have a choice. You can step back and redefine. Redefinition sounds like this. What matters here is the real issue is let's focus on the outcome. Those phrases move power instantly. Set the frame, lead the outcome. Now understand this. Frames are not loud, they are calm statements of reality. Influential people don't announce dominance, they assume it through structure. Structure beats force every time. Here's another truth. If you argue facts without setting the frame, facts won't save you. Why? Because facts live inside frames. Change the frame and the same facts mean something else. That's why emotional people win arguments against logical ones until the logical person reframes. You have a choice: chase points or define purpose. Purpose always wins. Let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop answering questions that are framed to weaken you. You will reframe them. If someone asks, "Why did you do that?" you respond, "The goal was X and this achieved it." You didn't answer their question, you replaced it. That's the key. Another discipline: never accept urgency you didn't create. Urgency is often a tactic. It forces mistakes, it forces reaction. You slow it down. This doesn't require a rushed answer. Now you control time, and you control decisions. You don't need their permission to slow things down. Another frame: most people fall into defensiveness. If someone accuses you and you rush to correct them, you accept the accusation as valid. Instead, you say that assumption isn't accurate. Then you state your frame. No emotion, no explanation, just clarity. Clarity disarms, that's the key. Here's what to stop doing immediately. Stop arguing inside label. Stop defending against exaggeration. Stop responding to emotional bait. These are traps. Influential people don't fight traps, they step around them. You have a choice: engage in chaos or impose order. Order creates leadership. Set the frame, lead the outcome, now understand the deeper truth. Framing is not about winning conversations, it's about shaping reality. The person who defines what matters decides what happens next. That's influence at its highest level. And it requires discipline. It's not about cleverness, it's about restraint. It's not about control of others, it's about control of direction. That's the key. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop testing you. Why? Because they feel the structure. They know you won't react. They know you'll redefine. They know you won't play weak frames, and that reputation protects you. You don't need their permission to lead conversation. This chapter gave you strategic control. You learn to reject weak frame, you learn to set direction, you learn to guide outcomes. Your thinking is clear, your words are precise, your tone is calm, your actions deliver, your frames dominate. But there's one more skill that multiplies all of this: the ability to lead without confrontation. You mastered control. Now let's sharpen subtlety. Questions redirect attention without confrontation. Strategic questions expose truth while keeping control. If you don't understand this, you'll keep fighting battles you never needed to fight. You have a choice. You can argue your point or you can guide the conversation. That's the key. Most people use statements to push. Influential people use questions to pull. Pull beats push every time. A statement invites resistance. A question invites reflection. Reflection creates leverage. Questions guide without force. Say it again: questions guide without force. The moment you ask the right question, control shifts, not loudly, not aggressively, quietly, and quiet control lasts longer. Here's where most people go wrong: they respond to pressure with explanation, they respond to disagreement with argument, they respond to challenge with defense. Every one of those reactions gives power away. Questions take it back. You don't need their permission to ask a question. Now listen carefully. A good question does three things at once: it slows the conversation, it redirects focus, it exposes assumptions, all without confrontation. That's influence at its cleanest. Here's an example: someone criticizes your approach. The weak response is to defend. The strong response is to ask, "What outcome are you trying to achieve?" That question reframes the conversation. Now it's not about opinion, it's about results. That's the key. Another example: someone pressures you to decide quickly. They want urgency, they want reaction. Instead of complying, you ask, "What happens if we wait?" Now urgency collapses. You didn't argue, you didn't resist, you redirected. Questions guide without force. This is why questions are dangerous in the right hands. They force others to reveal thinking, they expose gaps, they shift burden. Statements carry burden, questions transfer it. You have a choice: carry the burden of explanation or place the burden of clarity on them. Influential people choose the second. Now let's talk about discipline. Asking powerful questions is not about cleverness, it's about restraint. It's about not reacting, it's about not proving, it's about not rushing, it's not about ego, it's about direction. That's the key. Here's a rule you must adopt immediately. When tension rises, ask a question. Tension wants reaction, questions dissolve it. Another rule: never answer a bad question directly. Bad questions are framed to weaken you. They assume guilt, they assume urgency, they assume incompetence. You don't accept those assumptions, you replace the question. Example: why did you mess this up? You don't defend, you ask, what specifically are you concerned about? Now the accusation turns into a discussion. That's power. You don't need their permission to reframe. Let's go deeper. Strategic questions are not random, they are designed, they aim at outcomes, not emotions. Here are three categories you must master. First, outcome question: what does success look like here? These shift focus from blame to results. Second, assumption questions: what are we assuming that might not be true? These expose weak thinking. Third, boundary questions: what's within our control right now? These prevent chaos. Each category builds authority without confrontation. That's the key. Now understand this: asking questions does not make you passive, it makes you dominant quietly. Dominance is not volume, it's direction. The person asking the questions is steering. The person answering is reacting. You have a choice: be the one reacting or be the one guiding. Questions guide without force. Another discipline to adopt: use fewer questions but make them count. Rapid-fire questions feel interrogative. One well-placed question feels surgical. Ask, pause, let silence do the work. Silence after a question creates pressure. Pressure reveals truth. You don't need their permission to wait. Here's another mistake most people make: they ask questions to sound smart. That's ego. Influential people ask questions to reveal reality. Reality ends debates. Now listen carefully. If you ask a question, you must be willing to accept the answer. Questions are not traps, they are tools. If You ask to guide and then ignore the response, you lose credibility. That's the key. Let's make this practical. From this moment forward, you will replace 3 habits. Instead of explaining, ask. Instead of arguing, ask. Instead of defending, ask. When you feel the urge to speak, pause and ask yourself, what question moves this forward? That single habit will change your presence. People will feel it. They will sense control without aggression. You don't need their permission to lead quietly. Another truth. Questions create collaboration without surrender. They invite others into the process while keeping direction intact. That's influence without friction. And friction drains energy. Energy is finite. Influential people conserve it. That's the key. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop challenging you emotionally. Why? Because they know you won't bite. They know you'll redirect. They know you'll expose weak thinking calmly. That reputation protects you. Questions guide without force. This chapter sharpened your subtlety. You learn to guide without pushing. You learn to expose truth without confrontation. You learn to lead without noise. But there is a weapon even more powerful than question: silence. Silence does what words and questions cannot. You mastered guidance. Now it's time to master restraint at the highest level. Silence creates pressure others rush to fill. The one who can wait controls the exchange. If you master this, you master leverage. Most people fear silence. They interpret it as weakness, awkwardness, loss of control. They're wrong. Silence is not empty. Silence is loaded. You have a choice. You can rush to fill space or you can let space work for you. That's the key. In every interaction, someone feels pressure to speak. The person who doesn't feel that pressure holds power. Silence shifts power. Say it again. Silence shifts power. Silence does 3 things at once. It slows time. It exposes insecurity. It forces decisions. Words reveal intentions. Silence reveals positions and positions determine outcomes. Most people talk themselves out of advantage. They explain, they justify, they negotiate against themselves. All because they can't tolerate quiet. You don't need their permission to wait. Let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop responding immediately after you've made a clear point. You will state your position, then stop. No follow-up, no explanation, no softening, just silence. Watch what happens. The other person will speak. They always do, and when they do, they show you where they stand. That's the key. Another discipline: when someone asks you a question designed to rush you, pause. Do not answer instantly. 1 breath, 2 breaths. That pause tells them you are not reactive. Reaction invites control. Non-reaction establishes it. You have a choice. Relieve your discomfort with words or increase your influence with silence. Most people choose comfort. Influential people choose control. Silence shifts power. Now let's expose the real enemy. The enemy is not silence. The enemy is your impulse to speak. Impulse comes from fear: fear of misunderstanding, fear of judgment, fear of losing status. But silence demands discipline. It's not about being quiet, it's about being intentional. It's not about withholding, it's about timing. It's not about intimidation, it's about structure. That's the key. Here's what happens when you stay silent at the right moment. The other person starts talking. They reveal more than intended. They soften positions, they fill gaps. Why? Because silence creates pressure and pressure forces disclosure. This is not manipulation, it's human behavior. People are uncomfortable with uncertainty. Silence creates uncertainty and uncertainty pushes them to resolve it with words. Those words are information. Information is leverage. You don't need their permission to wait. Let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will stop responding immediately after you've made a clear point. You will state your position, then stop. No follow-up, no explanation, no softening, just silence. Watch what happens. The other person will speak. They always do, and when they do, they show you where they stand. That's the key. Another discipline: when someone asks you a question designed to rush you, pause. Do not answer instantly. 1 breath, 2 breaths. That pause tells them you are not reactive. Reaction invites control. Non-reaction establishes it. You have a choice. Answer to relieve tension or pause to create leverage. Silence shifts power. Now let's address a common misunderstanding. Silence is not avoidance. Avoidance is silence born of fear. Strategic silence is silence born of strength. The difference is intention. If you're silent because you don't know what to say, that's weakness. If you're silent because you're choosing when to speak, that's power. That's the key. Here's another place silence dominates. After someone challenges you, most people rush to defend. They explain, they justify. Instead, you pause, not long, not dramatic, just enough. That pause unsettles the challenger. They expect reaction. They get restraint. Restraint reverses roles. Now they feel exposed. You don't need their permission to hold the line. Another truth: silence protects you from mistakes. Most damage is self-inflicted. Said too fast, said too much, said emotionally. Silence blocks all 3. That alone makes it powerful. It's not about talkiveness, it's about discipline. That's the key. Now listen carefully. Silence works best when paired with clarity. Vague silence confuses, clear silence intimidates. Say what matters, then stop. That combination is lethal. You have a choice: rambling clarity into confusion or delivering precision followed by silence. The second one changes rooms. Here snorts a discipline you will practice daily. At least once a day, choose silence instead of commentary. Someone complains, listen. Someone provokes, pause. Someone pressures, wait. You don't need to comment on everything. You don't need to respond to every signal. Noise feeds chaos. Silence restores order. That's the key. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop pushing. Why? Because silence doesn't reward pressure. They learn that urgency won't move you, emotion won't pull you, provocation won't shake you. That reputation is protection. Silence shifts power. Now let's talk about timing. Silence is strongest at decision points. After an offer, after a statement, after a boundary. If you speak after those moments, you dilute them. If you stay silent, they solidify. This is why the one who waits wins. Waiting communicates option. Options are power. You don't need their permission to wait. Let's close this chapter with truth. Silence is not passive, it's active restraint. It's not absence of strength, it's strength under control. You've learned to think clearly. You've stopped seeking approval. You pause before speaking. You speak less and say more, you control tone. You stop proving yourself, you control frames, you guide with question. Now silence ties it all together, but silence alone is not enough. At some point you must speak again, and when you do, your words must end conversations, not reopen them. You mastered silence. Now let's master certainty. Certainty is felt, not explained. Emotional speech invites debate, certainty ends it. If you understand this, conversations stop drifting. Decisions start landing. You have a choice. You can speak emotionally and invite discussion, or you can speak with certainty and conclude it. That's the key. Most people confuse emotion with conviction. They raise their voice, they add intensity, they argue harder, and in doing so they weaken their position. Emotion asks for agreement. Certainty assumes it. Certainty closes conversation. Say it again. Certainty closes conversations. People don't debate certainty. They adjust to it not because it's loud, but because it's settled. Certainty communicates one thing above all else: decision, and decision is magnetic. Here's where most people fail. They speak from feeling instead of from position. They say, I feel like I'm just saying I think maybe. Those phrases leak power. They tell the listener this is negotiable, and negotiation invites challenge. You don't need their permission to be decisive. Now listen carefully. Certainty is not arrogance. Certainty is clarity held without apology. Arrogance pushes. Certainty stands. Arrogance tries to convince. Certainty expects alignment. That's the key. When you speak emotionally, you give people room to argue with your state. When you speak with certainty, you remove that room. Emotion makes your words about you. Certainty makes them about reality. Reality ends arguments. You have a choice. Speak from emotion and keep conversations open-ended. Speak from certainty and bring them to a close. Most people avoid certainty because it feels risky. They think, what if I'm wrong? Here's the truth. Uncertainty is riskier. Uncertainty invites endless discussion. Endless discussion erodes authority. Certainty, when grounded in thought and discipline, creates momentum. Certainty closes conversations. Let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will remove emotional qualifiers from your speech. No more I feel like, I just think I might be wrong, but replace them with this is the direction. This is the standard. This is the decision. Say it calmly. Say it once, then stop. Silence after certainty seals it. That's the key. Another discipline you must adopt: state conclusions, not processes. Most people explain how they arrived at a point. Influential people state the point. Process invites debate. Conclusion invites action. You don't need their permission to conclude. Here's an example: weak speech. I've been thinking about this, and based on what I've seen, I feel like this might be the best option. Strong speech. This is the best option. Same content, different power. One opens discussion, the other closes it. Certainty closes conversations. Now understand, this certainty does not mean you never change your mind. It means you don't broadcast uncertainty while deciding. Decisions can evolve privately. Publicly, they must be firm. Influential people adjust internally and present stability externally. That's discipline. It's not about ego, it's about structure. You have a choice. Process in public and look unsure, or decide privately and speak clearly. Let's talk about tone again. Certainty is not loud, it is measured. Emotion speeds up. Certainty slows down. Emotion reacts. Certainty states. Emotion escalates. Certainty settles. That's the key. When you feel emotional charge, pause, breathe, lower your pace. Then speak from decision, not feeling. If you cannot remove emotion yet, delay speaking. Delay is better than leakage. You don't need their permission to wait until you're grounded. Another truth: certainty tests people. They push back, they question, they poke for cracks. If you respond emotionally, they keep pushing. If you respond with calm certainty, they stop. Why? Because certainty gives them nothing to grab. You repeat the position. You don't add explanation. You don't defend. This is the decision: silence. That's the key. Here's a discipline that will change your presence instantly. When challenged, repeat your position once. No new arguments, no added emotion, no escalation. Repetition with calm is unmovable. It signals finality. Certainty closes conversation. Let's address fear. Many people fear certainty because they fear responsibility. Certainty says, I stand here. Emotion says, I'm still figuring it out. Leadership requires standing. Standing attracts criticism, but it also attracts respect. You have a choice: avoid responsibility and stay liked, or accept responsibility and be followed. Certainty chooses the second. Now listen carefully. Certainty is built before the conversation. It comes from preparation, from thinking clearly, from choosing positions in advance. That's why your earlier disciplines matter. Clear thinking, no approval seeking, pausing before speaking, brevity, calm tone, no proving, strong frames, strategic silence. All of that builds the foundation for certainty. Certainty is not a trick, it's a result. That's the key. Here's what to stop doing immediately. Stop arguing to feel right. Stop debating to feel validated. Stop adding emotion to compensate for doubt. If you are unsure, wait. If you are sure, speak simply. Simple certainty beats complex emotion every time. You don't need their permission to be decisive. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop dragging conversations out. They stop pushing for justification. They accept your statements as endpoints. Why? Because you train them to. You train them through consistency. Consistency creates trust. Trust amplifies certainty. Certainty closes conversations. This chapter locked your words. Your silence now has weight. Your statements now end discussions. Your presence now signals decision. But there is one final layer of influence most people never see. Influence starts before you speak, before tone, before words, before silence. It starts with presence. Presence is decided before words are heard. Posture, pace, and restraint shape authority. If you miss this, your words work uphill. You have a choice. You can walk into a room already leading, or you can start explaining from behind. That's the key. Influence does not begin when you open your mouth. It begins the moment you enter the space. Before word is spoken, people are already deciding. Are you calm or reactive, grounded or rushed, centered or needy? They feel it instantly. Influence starts before sound. Say it again. Influence starts before sound. Most people believe presence is personality. It's not. Presence is discipline. It's not about charisma. It's about control. It's not about being noticed. It's about being felt. And presence is built from three elements: posture, pace, and restraint. Master these and your words being power automatically. You don't need their permission to command space. Let's start with posture. Posture is silent messaging. Slouch posture says uncertainty. Tight posture says tension. Grounded posture says stability. Stability attracts trust. Stand tall, relax your shoulders, keep your head level, not rigid, not aggressive, controlled. Your body should say, I'm not rushed, I'm not threat. That's the key. When your posture is grounded, your nervous system calms. When your nervous system calms, your voice steadies. When your voice steadies, people listen. Influence starts before sound. Now pace. Pace is how fast you move through space and time. Fast pace signals urgency. Urgency signals pressure. Pressure signals lack of control. Influential people move deliberately. They don't hurry their steps. They don't rush their gestures. They don't scramble for position. They arrive settled. You have a choice. Rush to prove you belong, or move calmly and let the room adjust. That's the key. Slow movement creates gravity. Gravity pulls attention. When you slow down, others unconsciously match you. You set the tempo. Tempo is leadership. You don't need their permission to slow down. Now restraint. Restraint is the most misunderstood element of presence. Restraint is not weakness, it is withheld strength. It's the discipline to not react, not fill silence, not overgesture, not overexpress. Most people leak energy through excess movement, excess facial expression, excess commentary. Restraint seals energy. Sealed energy feels powerful. Influence starts before sound. Now listen carefully. If you talk before you settle, you sound unstable. If you speak before your body is grounded, your words lack weight. That's why presence must come first. Here's a discipline you must adopt immediately before you speak. Arrive physically. Arrive mentally, arrive emotionally. Plant your feet, breathe once, scan the room, then speak. That single pause upgrades your authority. That's the key. Let's talk about eye contact. Eye contact is not starring, it's calm acknowledgement. Too little eye contact signals avoidance. Too much signals insecurity. Balanced eye contact signals confidence. Hold eye contact while listening. Break it naturally while thinking. Return it when speaking. This rhythm communicates control. You don't need their permission to hold space. Now understand this. Presence is not about dominating rooms, it's about stabilizing them. People relax around grounded individuals. They trust them, they defer to them, not because they're loud but because they're solid. That solidity is felt before words. Influence starts before sound. Here's another truth. Presence is built in moments of non-action. How you wait, how you listen, how you handle silence. If you fidget, adjust constantly, or rush, you signal discomfort. Comfort with stillness is power. You have a choice. Fill space with movement or let stillness work. Stillness amplifies present. That's the key. Now let's address a common mistake. Many people try to perform present. They puff their chest, they force eye contact, they exaggerate stillness. That's insecurity pretending to be confidence. Real presence is relaxed. It's not forced, it's regulated. Regulation is discipline. It's not about control of others, it's about control of self. You don't need their permission to regulate yourself. Here's a practical drill. Next time you enter a room, do less. Fewer gestures, fewer words, slower movement. Notice the effect. People will look up, they will pause, they will adjust. Why? Because you change the signal. Signals create perception. Perception creates influence. Influence starts before sound. Now another discipline. Listen more than you speak, especially at the beginning. The first moments are not for talking, they are for observation. Observation sharpens context. Context sharpens authority. Speak after you understand the field. That's the key. Now let's connect this to everything you've learned. Clear thinking gives you structure. No approval seeking gives you independence. Pausing gives you timing. Brevity gives you precision. Calm tone gives you control. No proving gives you stability. Frames give you direction. Questions give you leverage. Silence gives you power. Certainty gives you finality. Presence ties it all together. Presence is the container that holds influence. Without it, your skills leak. With it, everything compounds. You have a choice. Ignore presence and struggle to be heard, or build it and be felt before you speak. That's the key. Over time, presence becomes reputation. People describe you as calm, grounded, solid. Those words open doors before you knock. You don't need their permission to become that person. This chapter sharpened your nonverbal authority. You learned that influence is felt first. You learned to command space without sound. You learn to let posture, pace, and restraint do the work, but presence alone is not enough. Eventually you must decide. Decisions are where influence is tested. You mastered presence. Now it's time to master the discipline that separates leaders from followers. Explanations invite judgment. Leaders inform, they don't justify. If you keep explaining your decisions, you keep giving away authority. You have a choice. You can decide and stand, or you can decide and defend. That's the key. The moment you explain why you decided, you invite others to evaluate whether your reason is good enough. And the moment they evaluate, you were no longer leading. You were negotiating. Decide, state, move on. Say it again, decide, state, move on. Most people explain because they want understanding. What they actually get is scrutiny. Scrutiny creates doubt. Doubt creates resistance. Resistance drains momentum. Leaders don't drain momentum, they create it. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. Here's the truth most people avoid. Explanations are not clarity, they are insecurity wearing logic. Secure people don't rush to be understood, they trust that outcomes will do the explaining. That's the key. Watch what happens when someone explains a decision too much. They add reasons, they add context, they add emotional cushioning. And with every sentence, authority leaks because the subtext becomes please agree with me. Influence does not ask for agreement, it assumes direction. Decide, state, move on. Now listen carefully. This does not mean you never give information, it means you stop justifying. Information supports execution. Justification invites judgment. There is a difference. You can say this is the plan. You do not need to say this is the plan because I felt like it was best after thinking about several options and considering everyone's opinions. The second version weakens the first. That's the key. Most people explain because they fear backlash. They think if they understand my reasoning, they won't challenge me. False. Explanation gives challengers more material. Less explanation means fewer handle. You have a choice. Give people handles to grab or give them direction to follow. Leaders choose direction. You don't need their permission to stop explaining. Here's another truth. When you explain, you move from authority into debate. Debate is horizontal. Leadership is vertical. Debate asks, what do you think? Leadership says, this is what we're doing. That vertical line matters. Decide, state, move on. Now let's get practical. From this moment forward, you will separate decision from discussion. Discussion happens before the decision. After the decision, discussion ends. Most people reverse this. They decide first, then they discuss endlessly. That's weakness. Strong people gather input, then they decide, then they stop talking. That's the key. Another discipline, never explain a decision unless explanation improves execution. If explanation does not change action, don't give it. Clarity for action is useful. Clarity for approval is not. You have a choice. Clarify to move forward or explain to feel safe. Safety is not leadership. Now listen carefully. People test decisions. They ask why not because they don't understand but because they want leverage. If you rush to explain, you give it to them. Instead, you respond with structure. This is the decision, this is the direction, this is what's next. Then silent. Silence seals decision, that's the key. Here's another behavior to stop immediately. Stop explaining decisions emotionally. Phrases like, I just felt I was worried that I didn't want anyone to be upset. These phrases expose fear. Fear invites challenge. Confidence closes it. You don't need their permission to be firm. Let's talk about trust. Many people think explaining builds trust. It doesn't. Consistency builds trust. Follow-up builds trust. Results build trust. Trust grows when decisions work, not when they are explained beautifully. Decide, state, move on. Now understand this. If you are always explaining, people stop listening to the decision and start analyzing the explanation. That flips the hierarchy. Your reasoning becomes more important than your role. And once that happens, authority erodes. That's the key. Here's a simple rule to memorize. If you wouldn't explain it to someone above you, don't explain it to someone below you. Leaders don't justify upward. That shouldn't justify downward either. They inform, information flows, justification leaks. You have a choice. Lead with structure or manage reactions. Managers manage reactions. Leaders set direction. You don't need their permission to lead. Another discipline, when someone pushes back, repeat the decision once. No new reasons, no added logic, no emotion. Repetition with calm communicates finality. This is the decision, then stop. That's the key. Let's address fear again. Stopping explanations feels uncomfortable at first. Why? Because you're removing a crutch. The crutch of approval, the crutch of validation, the crutch of being liked. But leadership requires standing without crutches. You have a choice. Lean on explanation or stand on certainty. Now connect this chapter to everything before it. Clear thinking gave you direction, no approval seeking gave you independence, pausing gave you timing, brevity gave you precision, calm tone gave you control, no proving gave you stability, frames gave you leverage, questions gave you subtlety, silence gave you power, certainty gave you finality, presence gave you gravity. Stopping explanations protects all of it. Explanations undo certainty. They soften frames, they weaken silence. Decide, state, move on. This chapter hardened your leadership. You no longer negotiate decisions, you no longer explain to feel safe. You inform and advance. But there is still one invisible force that can destroy authority if left unchecked: your emotional state. Because no matter how strong your words are, if your emotions run the room, you master decision. Now let's master emotional control. Influence is not luck, it's not charisma, and snorts, it's not manipulation, it's discipline. Discipline in how you think, discipline in how you speak, discipline in what you refuse to react to. If you control your mind, your words sharpen. If you control your words, people listen. And if people listen, you lead. Starting today, stop speaking to impress. Stop reacting to noise. Stop explaining yourself. Think clearly, speak deliberately, move with certainty. That is your challenge, and if you accept it, you will never speak powerless words again.